and took up the following 15, 16, in order of transferring $30,000 to water personal services, overtime from water capital water system improvements. That was adopted. 1616, approving the expenditure of funds from the Mass Department of Public Health Bureau of Substance Abuse for the FY16 First Responder Narcan Grant in the amount of $12,750. That was adopted. 1716, appropriating $250,000, same to be charged against available funds and credited to accounts as follows: $40,000 to DPW Snow and Ice, personal services overtime, and $210,000 to DPW Snow and Ice expenses. That was adopted. And lastly, 22-16, Vinnie Pusateri, City Solicitor, to do the following: establish an order reallocating funds from the Labor Negotiator Fund account to the Litigation and Special Counsel Fund account. Authorize the Law Department to use said funds to hire as Special Counsel Attorney William Traynor to handle workers' compensation cases on behalf of the city, and to authorize the Law Department to use said funds to hire as Special Counsel Attorney John Barrett to continue the smooth transition of the Law Department duties. That was adopted.
I have a motion and second to adopt the Finance Committee report. All those speaking to the motion. Councilor Joseph.
I was just questioned to City Solicitor Pusateri about the authorizing a new person for the workman's compensation cases. Just so that there's no surprises, we'd kind of like to be made aware of any pending workman compensation cases in executive session. Is that something that we should wait until Attorney Traynor is on board with, or is that something that you could give us a update at maybe the next council meeting?
I'm hesitating to say I'll give it to you by the next council meeting. I will tell you that Attorney Traynor and I and our workers' compensation support company, cooking company, have had a substantial meeting already with the school department, which is one classification of our workers' compensation cases. And the second one of those meetings, which would be with the general municipal employees classification of workers' compensation cases, is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So I should be
in the future.
Position,
give us a
if not next council meeting, shortly thereafter.
Councilor Joseph, if I can provide some clarity, I've already spoken to Solicitor Pusateri and the city clerk about scheduling a special presentation as well as during an executive session sometime before the budget hearings, probably late March, early April, to give Solicitor Pusateri enough time to fully wrap his arms around each of the issues that come before us.
Okay.
And then during those conversations, I was under the impression that perhaps you were looking for a full case list.
Right.
That would be a daunting task for me.
No, I'm just looking for the most expensive and the most ones that could hit us this year.
Okay.
Council will work to make sure we schedule that presentation. I have a motion and second to adopt the Finance Committee report. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. Legislative Affairs Committee oral report. Councilor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Legislative Affairs Committee met tonight at 6 p.m. We acted on the following petitions that are listed here. The ordinance 253-2013 was given leave to withdraw. Petitions 46-2013 of Councilor Joseph and Nicholas Carboni and the Elm Street Neighborhood Association to institute a property registration ordinance was given leave to withdraw. That was submitted in 2013. 51-2014, Marcus D. Natale to amend Chapter 3 of the Fitchburg City Code to remove the Department of Finance and Administration in its place. The following: have Assessor and Auditor Division become standalone departments reporting directly to the Mayor, and have the Department of Treasury, where the divisions of Information Technology and Purchasing report to the Treasurer, and the Treasurer report directly to the Mayor. That was given leave to withdraw. 52-2014 of Marcus D. Natale to amend Chapter 3 of the Fitchburg City Code to remove the Department of Human Services and in its place. The following: the divisions of Senior, Veterans, Library, and Recreation now be standalone departments reporting directly to the Mayor. That was given leave to withdraw. 176-2014, Council Marcus D. Natale and Amy Green to amend the Fitchburg City Code where applicable, as outlined. Performance evaluation, that was given leave to withdraw. Petition 138-2015 of Samuel R. Blair, Chairman, Fitchburg Historical Commission, to have the members of the Fitchburg Historical Commission be designated as special municipal employees, as outlined. That was granted. 241-2015, Councilor Angela Bezal to change the current ordinance to reflect Mass General Law, Chapter 90, S. 51E, create and establish an airport commission for the city consisting of 5 members plus the mayor, the president of the city council, and the commissioner of public works, who shall all be ex officio members. That was amended to delete the president of the city council and the commissioner of public works and include the economic development director along with the mayor. And that amendment and petition was approved. 23-2016, petition of Vincent Pusateri, city solicitor, to designate the positions of the city solicitor and assistant city solicitor as special municipal employees positions under Mass General Law 2268A. That was approved. And 24-2016 of Vincent Pusateri, city solicitor, to designate the positions of airport commissioners as special municipal employee positions under Mass General Law 26A was also approved. The committee adjourned at 6:45.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report,
Could we leave out 241, 2015?
excluding two. I have a motion and second to adopt to accept the Legislative Affairs Committee report, excluding 241-15. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt 241-15. Speaking to the motion, Council Joseph.
I guess I have a problem with giving up our council voice on the airport commission. There may be issues in the future where of some importance that we're taking our voice out of their decision if we chose to do so through the president of the city council. So, I mean, it's a mass general law that we're on there, and I think it's for a reason, for times of great importance that would include our airport, whether, you know, it be to disband the airport or keep it going, or, you know, I just think that is not something that I would dismiss as quickly as we are dismissing it. I think that we should give it a little bit more thought. I think we should do a little bit more research, and I think we should decide why the president of the council should be there, may need to be there, but I think that we're dismissing that person from that committee too quickly without giving it proper discussion. It's just my opinion.
I have a motion and second to adopt 241-15. I have a second that has been rescinded.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and second for 241-15 to be adopted. Speaking to the motion, Council Caddy.
I think Council Joseph is correct, and I do think maybe we ought to hold this and rethink this before we do something this drastic. Some of the councils weren't here when we had some difficulty with communications with the airport, and it took us quite a long time to get through it, and we have gotten through it. But I think the right way to do things is to keep the line of communication open. And I think this will shut the door on the council if we do this.
Council Hay.
Thank you. I'll leave the motion there so that we can have a vote. I also voted for it, but anytime council has concerns and wants to get a little more information, I'm always willing to do that. So the motion's on the floor. I intend to vote against it. If it loses, then I would certainly vote to keep it in committee and bring it back for some more discussion.
Council Beazell.
Thank you. I mean, my only, when I brought this before, was just to make sure that it was straightened out, because right now, presently, it's not the way that it's supposed to be. And my only ask would be that whoever city council decides to put on there, that they actually attend those meetings. I actually reached out to some former mayors who said they never even were on that, never even went to these meetings. And I always felt that the airport is kind of just left out of the city, and it's not included in the city. So by all means, if we're going to put people on this, and I want the people to be involved and I want them to be part of it. As far as the role of the president of the city council or the council in general, anything that's done financially or any property transactions or anything that takes place
still has to come before the city council. It doesn't matter if all of these people were excluded. Anything that's done at the airport still has to come before the city council, because this is a property of the city of Fitchburg. And all of us sitting in this room today as councilors, we have responsibility to make sure that that property is taken care of, just like we would any other property. So, I mean, I'm willing to do whatever the councilors want with this. I just hope that in the future, when we talk about things like this, that people who are serving on this actually do get involved with it. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
Through you to the city solicitor. If I may. When the term ex officio is used, does that allow the person voting rights at the meetings also? So
Yes, absent some further qualification that divests them of their right to participate, my opinion will be that they are full operating members of that commission.
So under the current,
Ex officio meaning simply because of their position as mayor,
They're right.
council president,
Yeah.
they are.
so under the current general laws we follow, under the ordinance you looked at, currently it has 5 members of the commission plus 3 ex officio members, the public works director, the mayor, and the city council president. So those 3, it's only when they're present they add to the quorum or not? My question is there an 8-member board or is it a 5-member board?
8-member board. And I believe that regardless of whether they attend, they're going to add to the quorum. The statute that you're talking about has a specific proviso language in there that says, absent some special law in which the commission has already been established, which would be your commission here in the city, as your airport and your commission predate Chapter 90, creation of the airport commission.
Mr. President, I'll remove my motion at this time. I think I had a motion to approve. I think it does need some clarification, so I would, whatever was the second, whatever, yeah.
I would draw the motion and make a motion that it stay in committee.
Second.
I have a rescinded motion and second, and in its place, a motion and second to hold. Speaking to the motion, Council Beazle.
I guess my only question to the city solicitor is, since this is in violation of Mass General Law, and we're holding it in committee, how long can we hold this in committee before, now that it's made known, how long can we hold something as a violation of Mass General Law in committee?
I don't see this as a violation of Mass General Law. What I was trying to explain to a previous question is that the Airport Commission was created prior to the passing of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 50, in that range. And consequently, there's some language in that statute that says, unless otherwise created by a special rule or law, I can't quote it off the top of my head. And I am interpreting that to mean that there was a special rule, there was some type of rule that either the city of Fitchburg or some other state statute that predated Chapter 90, the Section 50 series, that permitted the establishment of an airport commission. And consequently, I wouldn't interpret the statute inconsistent with the city's action. I would interpret the statute consistent with the city's action for that reason. So I do think it's a point that could be argued on both sides, but as city solicitor, that would be my interpretation, would be the one of consistency.
You all set, Councilor?
Yep. Thank you.
Councilors, I'm happy to hold this. If councilors have questions, I believe they should always be given an opportunity to explore this further and make sure they're comfortable before they take a vote. That said, as an existing ex officio member on that commission, I'll certainly continue to be an engaged member of that committee and an attending member of that committee moving forward until any future action is taken, and look forward to joining the mayor at the next scheduled airport commission meeting. That said, we have a motion and second to hold 241-15. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Hearings. Special permit 13/2016, Mr. Robert LeMay, to renovate non-conforming building that has been abandoned or not used for a period of not more than 2 years at 148 Myrtle Avenue, map 33, block 124, lot 0. I declare the hearing open. At this time, I'd like to ask persons representing the petition to be seated at the center of the table. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Robert Lavoie. I'm an attorney in Andover, Massachusetts. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I do have other parties available that can, address issues as they come up, or as the City Council desires. Our architect is here, Mr. Scriber, Mark Scriber. The owners are here. We also, not in the way of an offer of proof, but we have a neighbor across the street that can speak to the central issue, which basically boils down to, has this property actually been in continuous non-use for a period of at least 2 years? And it's our contention that, although the building inspector holds that position, he, unfortunately, from our perspective, is mistaken. We'll try to answer your questions and demonstrate that to your satisfaction. Having said that, we have gone through the steps of filing the application for the special permit before your council, and would like to present on that. If we can avoid any type of confrontation or difficulties, that's what we're all quite interested in. At the end of the day, our goal is to secure a building permit and to make the property conform with the state building code as required by the city's ordinances. The converse is if your council were to deny this special permit this evening, it would basically deprive the owners of property rights that would be not satisfactory to them. And I think it would diminish the housing stock, granted not by much, there'd be 4 units less, but, as the owners can tell you, and other professionals in your market, which you certainly know very well, being city council is here, right now, the market for student housing is very tight. Vacancy rates are in the 90s, occupancy rates are well in the 90s. There are few units to be had. To take 4 units off because of a perception that somehow this property was either abandoned, which it clearly wasn't abandoned. The other criteria is non-use, and we can speak to that to show that it was not out of use for a total of 24 continuous months. And as I said, the architect could, if the council would like to hear, when we get to an appropriate time, can explain what the building permit for the property would do, what issues it would address. For example, there's a stairway that, by sacrificing several bedrooms on each floor, the stairway can be made more conforming because it's a 3-story structure.
Sir, if you have a presentation at this time, I'd certainly welcome you to give any presentation or material that you might wish the council to consider at the end of a brief and succinct presentation. I'd then like to have councilors ask or pose any questions or concerns to both you or the property owner. Solicitor Pusateri.
I just had a chance to read through the memo, and if there's a disagreement with the building commissioner's decision, doesn't the general law require an appeal also to the zoning board on the determination of non-use?
As the zoning enforcement officer, he's made that determination. I'm aware that the letter was dated the 12th. I'm not sure when it was, January 12th. I'm not sure when it was delivered. If the your suggestion or the will of the council is that, we suspend and go appeal that determination, we could. Again, we're not trying to avoid, for lack of a better term, the clutches of the special permit. Everyone that does land use and your city council is a permit granting authority, so you've dealt with this issue before in different contexts. The whole purpose of having a special permit is so that the governing body, and here it's your council, can impose reasonable conditions as it sees fit in order to protect not only the city but also protect the neighborhood and the like. So we're happy to do it either way. I think since it's teed up and being heard now, I'd like to be heard. And again, if the council sees fit at the end of the hearing to grant the permit with conditions, that we're happy to take that, again, because our goal is basically to get the building permit that we believe we're entitled to. If there really is no discontinuance of use for a solid 24 months, then we would not have as many conditions or restrictions. But again, we're not trying to get out of that. That's why we voluntarily filed this petition, so that we could try to address any questions or concerns.
Second, sir.
Challenging.
The statute.
Speak louder so we can hear them, right?
Mr. President, could we please hear what you guys are discussing, please?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, sir. I think what the gentleman and I just spoke about is that to overturn a decision from the building commissioner is a general jurisdictional grant to the zoning board by Mass General Law. So if we're saying that we disagree that the building commissioner got this wrong on the decision of abandonment or on the issue of non-use for a period of 2 years, that issue goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals. In our bylaws, as you're well aware of, and we recently changed the special permit for to get a special permit as a result of non-use comes here. So there's, if you will, 2 steps to the process. First, was the building commissioner correct when he made a determination that the property was abandoned or was not used for a period of 2 years? And if so, then is the applicant entitled to a special permit? It just seems to me, while I appreciate the concept of we're all teed up and ready to go on an application for a special permit, if it's denied, then you're going to go down to the zoning board and you're going to ask for them to overturn that decision, would be my expectation.
Or we'll appeal the denial to the Superior Court or the Land Court.
Superior Court. And then we would just be discussing the criteria on, as you laid out in your
Memorandum in support.
I thought I just saw it.
Yeah, the last
Whether or
4
not there was
pages.
an architectural or other features that were deemed appropriate for rehabilitation by city council. So that's the way I see the case. So I'm wondering if you do have those 2 issues, whether or not you shouldn't pursue, because if the building commissioner was wrong, then everything that we're doing here is a moot issue, would be my thinking.
Councilor Hay, I see a question for the city solicitor.
Yeah, it's in relationship to this. It's for Attorney Pusateri. Is what you're saying that if this body takes action tonight, they could then go back and appeal it to the zoning board, their disagreement with the ruling of the building commissioner. And/or, if we denied it tonight, they could go to Superior or Land Court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so having said that, for myself, there are two things. One is, I certainly want to avoid going to Superior or Land Court, because that is, cost the city time and money. On the disagreement with the building commissioner on the ruling of whether it was abandoned for 24 months, if they get it tonight, it doesn't go back there. But if they don't get it, and it goes back there, and the zoning board were to agree with the building commissioner, they could then appeal to Land Court or the Superior Court. But if the zoning board determined that the commissioner was incorrect, they wouldn't need to come here at all.
That's correct. And with the caveat that there are certain timeframes which may or may not be applicable. Is it 20 days to appeal the decision
I
of
think
this body?
it's 30 days from the issuance of the building inspector's letter, which is dated January 12th, and people remember it was Martin Luther King Day on Monday, the 18th, and I don't. My head spins, thinking of trying to perfect an appeal to the zoning board of appeals in that fashion, which is why we're just as pleased to present. The application has been filed with you, and
So what the gentleman's saying is there may or may not be, they may not be able to appeal the issue of non-use at this juncture because they may have gone outside of that particular period of time. You said 30 days. After a decision is made, whether it be by this board or by the zoning board, I think there's a 20-day window where there has an opportunity to appeal. And then the gentleman and I might be able to see eye to eye on whether or not him filing this petition may or may not have told any opportunity to bring an appeal to the zoning board on the issue of abandonment or non-use.
I think that all makes sense. Again, part of the rationale for proceeding is, in terms of economy, everyone's had it in their pack, or knew what the public hearing was going to be. We've gone to some lengths to get everybody here tonight. I think some councils may be curious about what's this all about.
Has the issue of non-use been raised in the packet, though?
Basically as a by the way, we disagree with the building inspector, building commissioner. But having said that, we have voluntarily filed this, so the action of voluntarily filing this will probably be like a statement used against us, any such appeal.
Well, I don't
And
think we're
again,
trying to take an adversarial or hostile
Sure.
approach. We're just trying to figure out, and I think what you're dealing with, sir, respectfully, is a body that's just recently made some overtures towards changing the provision that brings you before this board, and actually now wants all these cases to be heard by the zoning board. And particularly where you may have a secondary issue that is clearly within the purview of the zoning board. In the zoning board, you have people that have operated there for many years that are best equipped to establish what appropriate conditions in the event that they do look favorably on a special application for a special permit.
I mean, I can see the logic and rationale for, the city council. I happen to be on the Amesbury City Council for 10 years, so I sit on that side of the table many nights a year. I can see the rationale for, why the bylaw was amended in 2011 to the way it is, because, at some point in time, the city fathers and councilors want to, just the way we heard earlier about the airport commission, you're all concerned about, what the housing stock and housing condition for its residents are in Fitchburg. So I think we have to take the hand we're dealt with. I think we've perfected an application to be heard before you tonight. And And again, we'd just like to present, and then it'll be up to the council what you want to do with it.
Solicitor Pusateri, am I correct in understanding that we have two options, two routes to proceed? Either the petitioner accepts that they're truly petitioning that the property has been abandoned for 2 years, and thus they wish for us to truly evaluate the special circumstances of a special permit request, or they wish to challenge the occupancy ruling and go back to the ZBA for their determination before it could even come to us.
I don't think we have an option. I think he is saying, I filed an application for a special permit, and I'm prepared to go forward, so.
Thank you.
I think that's what and I think what I would say is, in the event that he was unsuccessful here, I think there would be some time limits that may prevent him from challenging the 2-year requirement, the 2-year non-use, which brought him here in the first place.
Thank you.
But I don't think we can trap him into that, and I'm sure that he's willing to maintain as much latitude for himself as possible as he goes through the
Thank you,
process.
Solicitor Pusateri. Council Green.
Yes, I guess my question would be, we've got the building commissioner sitting right here, so I would like to hear from Mr. Lanciani on, yes, it's been over 2 years, or it hasn't been over 2 years of either non-use or uninhabited.
Is that a question through me and directed to?
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
Commissioner
he's sitting
Lanciani.
here, so I'd like to hear from him
Mr.
before we
President,
move
if I
forward.
could, I don't have any problem with hearing from Mr. Lanciani if that's what the council wants, but if the council is going to get that, then I think that the applicant's also going to have their opportunity to have their people speak as to why they disagree with Mr. Lanciani's ruling.
I'm inclined to agree with Councilor Hay in that Commissioner Lanciani has had the opportunity to evaluate that previously, which is why that special permit is in front of us. He's filed previous documentation. Additionally, we just discussed via Solicitor Pusateri that we don't wish to discuss or reevaluate something that the zoning board would be the appropriate entity to appeal or further evaluate that decision.
Okay, then I guess my other question, oh, I'm good for right now, I guess. Thank you.
Just point of clarification, because it kind of made it muddy. So maybe, are we all in agreement that this building, we're going forward as the building's been vacant for 2 years? That's what I thought I heard, but I just want to make sure. So if that's the case, and I guess what Mr. Lanciani's already put down is we all accept that. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm following it right. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. We are all proceeding under the assumption that we're applying, that we're entertaining a special permit petition under the conditions that it's been abandoned for 2 or more years.
Okay.
Abandoned or not used for 2 years.
Right.
Because our building commissioner, who is our expert in the field, has made that finding, and it has not been challenged.
Okay. Thank you for the point of clarification. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Okay, so with that cleared up, I see extensive information and input here from the city departments. More information than I've ever seen on most of these matters that come before us. First, we have a letter from the building commissioner, flat out stating that, in his opinion, the permit should be denied, citing several issues with other properties that this owner has, and also with the existing property. But he does list, if we were to approve this, 6 specific conditions that have to be put on the permit. That's number 1. Number 2, we have a letter from, it's approved with modifications from the fire department, stating as such that a 26F inspection needs to be done through the fire prevention office. So the building commissioner doesn't believe we should approve the permit, but if we do, there should be 6 specific conditions. Fire department says yes, as long as it has that 26F inspection. The community development department believes it should not be approved because they don't believe it'll benefit the area because there's already a surplus of said units. Then you have the planning board that voted unanimously to accept the permit, but that it be relegated to several conditions that they list that I won't read. You have them all here, but one of them, the first one, is that the structure has less than 4 dwelling units. So there are several modifications that the planning board voted on. And there also was an approved by the DPW for a special permit as long as it has a stormwater management plan. So there is a whole litany of input from all of these different agencies, some that say deny it, others that say approve it with modifications. So the building department has listed 6 specific criteria that need to be followed in order for us to grant this permit. And,
If you choose.
Excuse me?
If you were
If we were to choose to do that, yes. So the building department is saying that if we were to go forward with this, we would have to put the following conditions, such as existing barn must be rebuilt to current building code or removed before any units can be occupied. The entire building shall have a fire protection system in compliance with the current building code before any units are occupied. The building shall be brought into compliance with the current codes before any units are occupied. All work being done must be done under construction control guidelines. A valid certificate of inspection must be received, and the owner must provide a copy of the lease agreement for all units of the building to show the building is being operated as a legal apartment building before any units can be occupied. And then there's that stormwater management plan. And the planning board, as I said, has all these litany of things that totally go against what the owners want to do with this property. So this is a very mixed bag of conditions or opinions that these
Right.
agencies
They're
have given
basically
us.
recommendations to you
Right,
as
exactly,
as the
but-
authority that you can.
I understand that, Counselor. I'm saying that, first off, that it's good to get this, because in previous hearings, we've gotten practically nothing from anybody, and we just had to take the property owner's word for it. But there are concerns about this project from several agencies, but I just wanted the council to know, as you have in your packet, that there are specific conditions that several agencies recommend we impose if we were to grant the permit and wanted to put conditions on it. So, at the very least, from where I sit, I wouldn't support this special permit unless all these conditions that are recommended by the fire and DPW and the building office be adhered to. The storm management plan, the 26F inspection, and then the 6 criteria the building department lists. That would be my opinion. Thank you.
Counsel Caddy.
This is just for clarity. Sir, you gave us 7 pages that were sitting on the table when I walked in tonight. It's very, very difficult when a meeting's going on
I
to
understand.
absorb all of this. I tried to do my best to do it. But this is for the solicitor. I've heard 3 different terms used tonight about the property. The building inspector used the term that the property was vacated. The attorney before us uses the term abandoned or remained unused. What does the law say? What's the definition that we're looking for when the building is vacated, abandoned, or unused for 2 years? What's the definition of that by law?
So there's 2 concepts that are there, and they're often considered the same thing, but they're 2 distinct separate concepts. The first concept is abandonment, and that requires some type of showing of an intent to no longer use the property for the specific purpose that it was being used for. That could happen in an instant. Doesn't have to go on for 2 years. The second type of issue that you have is the non-use for a period of 2 years. That's a little bit more arbitrary. There's a lot of bright lines there. It was an ending to a use, and then a 2-year period went on, and then that 2-year period has come to a close, and now any grandfathered rights to the property have been surrendered or are gone. So those are the concept of the property being vacated seems to contemplate an abandonment, but certainly once it's no longer being used, and after that period of time, after 2 years goes by. But I think that issue, that an analysis would not be right before you. I think we're simply proceeding along tonight with the assumption that analysis was correctly done by the building department, whether it was done by abandonment or the 2-year period of non-use. And now you're only simply looking at the criteria, which is whether or not there's an architectural or other feature that the city council deems appropriate for rehabilitation here. That's the factor that you need to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council Joseph.
I guess in terms of whether or not the architectural structure is deemed to be worthy of being upgraded, it all hinges on a lot of the things that we got from the planning board and from the building commissioner, where it says modifications have been made to several, the barn and other pieces of the property, the outside staircase and things like that, that are not up to code and not safe in today's standards. And looking at the recommendations from the planning board, I think that they cover the majority of the recommendations that all of the different entities have made. So I would, at minimum, if we were to pass this, put the planning board's stipulations on that property and make it at least be brought up to code, if that is possible, and there's nothing less than the fire code and the building code that would be acceptable for this property, and the planning board's recommendation that it be no more than a 4-unit building and it have two parking spaces. I mean, they're all written in there, I think, fairly well. If this building is deemed by the building inspector not to be able to be brought up to code, then I think that that's a recommendation that he needs to make to us as a council in order to not make this permit based on an architectural reason. So I think that we need a determination from the building inspector whether or not this has any architectural salvage ability for being in that, for us to grant it the special permit.
Councilor Hay.
The architect wanted to respond to.
If I could respond to that, I'd appreciate it. There's a couple of issues at hand. One is, we'll set the whole abandonment aside.
Yeah, we're not talking
Although
abandonment.
I would like to add one thing to that. When I walked the property for life, health, safety purposes, I deemed a lot of conditions that were done to the property after. I think what happened was the property was vacated by all the students, and then the current previous owner started doing a lot of work to the property. Realizing that it was not done under a building permit, I think the intent was to repair the property into a more modern condition and then reoccupy. So what had happened was there's a lot of work that had been done in the barn in particular to shore it up, to take care of it, that is currently not code. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody really walk through there until there's a lot of structural conditions assessed. I do completely agree with life, health, safety. That's my charter as an architect, to bring buildings back up to a livable standard condition. I'm currently working for Atlantic Union College doing the same exact thing. So I do think that a lot of conditions relative to life, health, safety should be addressed. The one thing I don't necessarily agree with is the stormwater management plan. There really is no effect to hardscape surfaces, impervious scape surfaces, stormwater runoff. So you can look at any house on the property next to, adjacent, across the street, and they're all in a similar state and condition. And it'd be just ludicrous to ask everybody to do a stormwater management plan when nothing is changing. So we can address further life, health, safety issues as they come up, but I just wanted to offer that relative to the intent of life, health, safety is very important, I think, to the building owner as well as my charter as an architect.
So minus the stormwater, is the owner prepared?
Councilor Joseph. Councilor Hay still has the floor.
Oh, I had the floor.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, to add to that, there are existing conditions that are non-conforming: stair, tread, riser, unsafe conditions, handrails, the exterior deck, and so forth had been constructed probably without a permit that absolutely needs to be addressed before any occupancy would even be considered.
And you would be, the owner is willing to abide by the planning board's recommendation to bring this up to code?
With the only exception being, the planning board actually says have less than 4 units. So the planning board is asking you to impose, a forfeiture, a pound of flesh, for this applicant to get a building permit, make him forfeit one of the 4 units. That the assessor, I outlined in here, and I have a copy of the assessor's record too. This property has historically been 4 units. I think you could speak to the fact that it's large enough and sufficient to support 4 units. And even though the list of conditions, looks long, if you really boil them down, it's anything that any sane property owner would want to do. And, for example, landscaping and, obviously windows and the like. No matter who you are, there's no getting around the building code. And, that's why the owners have hired a qualified architect. He's consulted with them. We have floor plan drawings. We can, I would like at least 5 minutes to make a quick presentation of material so you get the sense of what we're proposing to do. And just to boil it down and answer probably your central question, we are proposing to restore, as this owner has restored 7 or 8 other properties, a property that was underwater, got foreclosed on like many properties. I think this one, was better than most. The Fannie Mae had took care to make sure all the steps were followed, expeditiously carried out the foreclosure, marketed it quickly as a 4-unit dwelling that needed, for lack of a better term, TLC, tender loving care, and obviously the LeMays are not sentimental, so that it won't be tender loving care. It will be good entrepreneurial spit and polish to meet the code. And I think you have a fine building commissioner that understands and applies the building code fairly. So, and our architect has no qualms about meeting and making the property comply. But the one planning board condition that I think is draconian, and I think hopefully your board your council would not agree with, is to make this property forfeit 1 unit, because if you think about it, 25% of the economics go out the window, and it's hard to justify doing a lot of work to the property. Again, we have a brief 5-minute presentation with boards that can show you. And one of the key things about special permits, and obviously, as you said, the zoning board handles them month in, month out. I'd venture to say your board probably doesn't handle a lot of land use permits, but the key is basically what's the effect of this on the amenity of the neighborhood. And you may or may not know the neighborhood, but we have a street plan with graphics colored to show you that there are the whole neighborhood.
Following Councilor Joseph's questions, I'll be allowing you an opportunity to make your presentation.
I guess I haven't. Just because the neighborhood has been brought to that level in the past does not mean that we want to continue the neighborhood to that level. We have an opportunity now to start to change that neighborhood, to make it less dense and to make it more agreeable to the city of Fitchburg. So I don't see myself as being somebody that is going to do anything less than what the planning board has recommended. I would see myself as doing more than what they have recommended. So I consider what the planning board has given you as conditions to be the minimum conditions that I am going to agree to in this special permit. So you're looking in the wrong place if you're looking for something, say, we've got a problem with 3 as opposed to 4. You've taken over a foreclosed property. You took all of this under speculation as to what you could do with it. Speculation and reality are not always the same thing, and my consideration on reality is this is the conditions that I'm willing to live with, is what came out of the planning board. If that's not what you would have gone into that building, that's not necessarily my problem. If it was a 8-family before and we say it's a 3-family, that's not necessarily my problem. Okay, that's the person that bought the property on speculation that they would be able to do something with it. That's all.
At this opportunity, I'd like to have you give a brief presentation. I have a feeling that may answer some of the counselors' questions, at which point, at the conclusion of the brief presentation, we'll allow counselors to continue asking questions.
Question for clarity first.
Counsel Caddy.
This would be the solicitor. It was suggested by the planning board that they meet the standards of a lodging house. What would the difference be? Is this going to be an apartment house or a lodging house? And could you explain what a lodging house would be?
I don't have the zoning book in front of me, so I don't have the definitions. The concept here is to escape the definition of a lodging house and also escape the definition of student housing. Student housing would be having 4 students in a dwelling unit. Each apartment, there'll be 4 in this building, would be considered a separate dwelling unit. I don't have the number off the top of my head for a rooming house, but I think if it's 5 or more persons occupying a dwelling unit that are unrelated, not a family, then they would be considered to be a dwelling house. And Councilor Di Natale is telling me 3.
I got it from Mr. Curry.
Okay. And I would certainly defer to his expertise. So, to answer your question, is this a boarding house or is this a dwelling house? Well, I think what they're trying to say is, well, we're not going to do either of those things. We're going to take this building, we're going to cut it into 4 dwelling units. We're going to stack 3 people in each dwelling unit, and that way we aren't going to be a boarding house, and we're not student housing. We are a 4-family home. A multifamily would be the definition.
Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, you have the opportunity to give a presentation.
Thank you. You probably need a microphone nearby, or is it picking up over there?
How far is it? If you could walk closer towards the center of the room so that FATV has an opportunity to pick up the audio, that would be helpful.
They're probably not here for that. So what we put up here as a board is, this is the plot plan, the site plan. It shows you what this property looks like. This building back here is referred to as the barn or the garage. And again, if that were to go, a lot of the, again, because all we're really concerned about here is that because this building was built in the over 100 years ago, it complied with zoning because there was no zoning, I believe, until 1945. So there was nothing wrong with this building until zoning came in and said setbacks need to be larger because, you know, we don't want it so jam-packed. And every city has the right to change its mind, and Fitchburg decided that larger setbacks are required. But without grandfathering, every time the zoning would change, you'd be basically asking people to forfeit what they've invested in and justifiably relied upon the rules. So the concept of grandfathering, of course, came in because if people try to play by the rules and the city changes the rules, just ask yourself how fair that is. So that's where grandfathering came from. And basically, the balancing act that the state and your city has done is say, well, after 2 years, if you're not doing anything at all, you know, you've indicated that, you know, you don't care about the grandfathering rights. And, you know, as you can tell by all this effort, nothing could be further from the truth. We truly believe we are grandfathered. We also believe that discretion's the better part of valor. Would rather just, you know, get to mutually agreed upon special permit that protects the city, supports the reasonable expectations of when a property has been a 4-family for 50 years and, you know, Fannie Mae markets it as a 4-family, and it's designed and occupied most recently as a 4-family, and the city assessor taxes it as a 4-family, that, you know, if it looks like a rose, it must be a rose. Well, this one may be a, you know, chrysanthemum or something. So anyways, this gives you the site plan. In terms of the parking, there's no problem about putting parking here. There's no problem getting in and out of this property. Obviously, unless you pick up the building and move it to the center of the lot, I venture to say that, 90% of existing properties, that are more than 50 years old are not going to ever comply with your current setbacks. And it's, no one ever holds property owners to that standard, which is why grandfathering came in. I think the other, again, because, the impact is basically what's the impact and amenity to the neighborhood. So this plan will, show you what this neighborhood looks like. Excuse our presentation modes here. Basically, to help you with the coding, this in blue is the subject property. That's the barn extension we're talking about. All the yellow houses are residential houses in this neighborhood. The green colored properties are the ones that the LeMay family owns and is bought over time, in the last, 2 or 3 years, fixed them up. I've heard that, there are, some deficiencies that are claimed. We have, a student here that's still a student that's rented in 3 properties, and be glad to talk to you about, how good landlords the LeMays are. This is the president's house, Fitchburg State. This is the police station, Fitchburg State. Did I miss anything, Peter?
You can't just from the top, so it's right in walking distance of all of them.
That's the main campus. So that's why this neighborhood is what it is. And these are not all student houses. They're,
Attorney LaVoy,
Yes.
do you have any designation of, I see the houses.
Right.
Are they single-family homes, owner-occupied home, multi-dwelling? Do you know any of that? Or do you have that? I mean, I have that information, but you don't have that on there? Or do you?
Councilor Bean, if I may, these are just an outline of all of the properties there. They're mixed singles, mixed twos, mixed threes. What we're trying to demonstrate with this chart in particular is that everything's full. Every apartment in the area is full. There isn't a vacancy here, except for right in through here, where there's one boarded up building, which is in excellent shape. It's painted, it's clean, it looks wonderful, which there's a representative from the neighborhood that, it's right in her backyard, because the building is very clean and it's orderly. But the presentation of this diagram is to show that even though there are several buildings or quite a few buildings in the area, they're full. The vacancy is 90-something%.
Mr. President, I was asking, I know that's a dense area. I'm just wondering, I've seen maps, and I have, it's helpful to us to find out which ones are single-family homes, multi-family homes. That's really important information for us to look at the neighborhood. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
To see the yellow, the outline, that really doesn't help.
Right. I think intuitively.
You know what I'm saying, Attorney?
I absolutely, and I don't.
You get me.
I think it's, it's a.
You wouldn't vote on it in Amesbury if you were.
It's a very fair question, and understandably, I don't have that data tonight,
Right.
but we could submit it to you, if you were to continue this hearing.
Amesbury probably doesn't have those.
Bob, can I add a couple of things? The property owner that's across from us, we have contacted the neighbor at 145. That's directly across, probably the one that's impacted the absolute most in the neighborhood.
Is that the one with the 6 roommates needed on it? Right across the street.
Councilor Bean, I have a speakers list. I'd prefer to let these gentlemen finish their presentation, and then I'd be happy to add you to the list.
Sometimes I take advantage of it.
I think
Sometimes, not always.
I think that's what most people would say is voted as the nicest house in the entire neighborhood. Best maintained. So if anyone going up and down the street and said which house was the best maintained, it would be the representative at 145 that's here to speak. We also marked the 114, which is our other property. Beside 114 is 23 and also the 56. Those were by Debbie, the property manager, another property management company. She's,
That's her house here.
hang on a second, no. Let me sorry, just a second.
23 is right here.
Yeah, you got it. 23 and 56, the one that's marked over on the side with cedar. She's also signed a letter saying that she has absolutely no vacancies in the area and the market's strong. So it kind of
disagreeing with the argument that there were vacancies. There are no vacancies in those houses. There's not a single house in those yellow blocks that has a immediate for rent availability, because this is the walking distance to the college. And the house that is the only house that's under construction is the one that's in purple. And the ladders are there, and it's literally under construction now. So if you mark the distance, why this is a very unique property is we purchased the properties on both sides of it. We are the neighbor. We are the person absolutely most affected by the setbacks, because we own the house to the left, we own both houses to the right, we own the house diagonally across. This is not a normal situation because of the where the property's owned, and this is the walking distance, the prime area. There are other areas of town that are outside this area where students need cars and there's problems of being able to walk. As everyone knows, when the temperature went, close to zero, walking a quarter mile is a lot better than walking 3/4 of a mile to school.
Gentlemen, at this time, I have a growing speakers list with counselors with various questions. Would you be open to fielding some of those questions at this time?
Absolutely.
Are
We'll
you
answer
at the
all
conclusion?
questions
Okay.
the council has.
Great. That's
And
it. Count.
The architect could show you the floor plan too, but
If you have a floor plan that you intended to show us, I'd ask if you could show that to us. I just want to make sure that, in the interest of time, we give everyone the
Sure.
opportunity to speak.
And if I could just interject one statement, which is, normally, the nonconformity that's being argued about is use, and it's a lot easier to, be crystal clear about abandonment or non-use of a nonconforming use. Here, this is zoned, RB. This is a permitted use. 4 units is a permitted use. So it's not like, it's an unpermitted use that we're trying to, even change or cram. It's a permitted use. And this is the floor plan. The architect can speak better than I can, but in terms of, his assessment,
Certainly.
it's going to meet code. He's going to make it meet code.
So basically what we have here is we have 3 diagrams. We have the first floor, second floor in the middle, and then the third floor to the right. Basically, these dark lines represent the demising or firewalls that are existing, but they are inadequate relative to the current code. They need type 5/8 drywall. They need to be fire stopped and acoustically treated as well. So the floors are represented, and it basically is currently in this existing state. So we're not shuffling, we're not changing, we're not, modifying to any great degree other than looking at current building codes and what we have to do physically to the property to make that code work. This is the front of the property right here, so you can see the entry here. So what really is in question is the barn, which is back here, and then the side property here. Those are what are currently non-conforming relative to the setbacks to the city. So this existing wall here does not have any property within, say 50 or 60 feet to it. So there aren't really any concerns relative to, fire safety or anything else. There's no properties that have structures that will affect this. So that's basically it.
Thank you. Councilor Di Natale.
Perhaps I'm just an impatient individual, but we have several subject matter experts who have provided the council with a litany of things they want to see on the permit. I am not a subject matter expert. I don't know why these hearings drag on, but quite frankly, they did the legwork, and as I said earlier, this is more legwork than we've ever been accustomed to. So we have planning board recommendations, we have building department recommendations, we have fire department recommendations. Again, maybe I'm impatient, but I always ask myself, if we don't approve these permits, what happens? Is it in the city's best interest to let the building decay? Is it the city's best interest to let it deteriorate to the point where it's unsafe, if it not is already? And is it in the city's best interest to let the property further deteriorate, let it continue to be abandoned, to the point where the city is then going to end up having to spend money 5 years down the road to buy it, demolish it? It makes no sense to me why we wouldn't accept these permits with conditions. Again, they're investment risks. As Councilor Joseph said earlier, there's a risk these people take when they buy these properties. Quite frankly, I don't care if the investment is warranted or not. That's not up for me to decide, which is why I get irritated visibly when we have these hearings. All I care about is, what do the experts say? And they say this, that, and the other thing. So to me, these hearings should go quite swimmingly, but to say, we'll grant you the special permit with these conditions that the departments have imposed or recommended we impose, and end it there. I just feel like these hearings go on for hours on end, and for the people who want to deny it, great. What's the alternative? Like we did on Water Street. What's the alternative? It's going to end up being the city taking money out of a demolition account that we don't have. Okay, so I say, I don't want to put it in a motion because I know a lot of people have to talk, but I say we grant the special permit with the building and planning conditions. Heck, I'll even compromise. Make it 4 units. Not less than 4, make it 4. But every other condition in the planning board's recommendations, the 26F fire inspection and all the building department recommendations, those all should be in the special permit application when we grant it, and put it to bed. I don't want to sound like I don't want to hear from everybody else, but it's just I don't understand all the talk when, to me, it's I could understand all the discussion if we didn't have this input. We have so much input here. To me, this should be an easy hearing to approve a special permit on, because we have, where it has not existed, all of these recommendations. So, and I'll tell you right now, if the recommendations are not accepted, I'm not supporting the permit, not because I want the building to deteriorate, but because I am not going to vote for a permit that the subject matter experts say we should do, because I don't know any better, which is why, as we've said earlier, these hearings shouldn't even be before us. So if we're going to disavow all of the recommendations, why do we have these gentlemen waste their time? So that's where I stand. I think Councilor Joseph said it similarly, where, for me, I'm not supporting the special permit unless these conditions are imposed. But I caution everybody, if we don't accept it, what is your alternative for that space? Because it's not going to serve the interests of the residents in that neighborhood to let that building continue to deteriorate. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Come up a couple times in the packet that's come up. We got a packet on Saturday. The first time I saw it, I think you probably got emailed about certificates of inspection for other properties that were owned or controlled by FSOC property management. We dictated in there. We accept that one of the permits at 150, the one on the side, expired in December 2015. So it expired 6 weeks ago. When that was brought to our attention, we've already paid the fee and filed for the certificate of inspection for 150. We did not have the copy of the certificate on hand for 81 Edward Street. That was also applied for today in the schedule. So the 2 certificates, one is due at the end of the month. So we had 2 permits that had lapsed. Both have been applied for. Both of the fees have already been paid from Saturday. Now remember, yesterday the city was closed. That meant that we did it in less than 1 hour of the city being open. The 26F have all been scheduled. So when we took the buildings...
Sir, I'd ask if you could address any specific points that Councilor Di Natale had. Otherwise,
hang on a second. I'm trying to address exactly the question. We absolutely agree with the 26F. They've all been scheduled. We actually we scheduled for all the 8 of the buildings that were scheduled today.
I have no doubt you accept it. I'm just saying those were the recommendations provided to us. Whether they're going to be done or not, they should be on the special permit. That's all I'm saying.
Councilor Di Natale, I agree with you.
Sir, you don't have the floor right now. You asked a question. I believe it's been answered at this point.
It has, but in closing, I guess I'm a simpleton. We have all of this information. Why are we not just saying, great, here's the permit with these conditions that I have not heard anybody that presenting saying they're against the conditions. I just don't understand all the discussion. I mean, well, maybe I just opened up a can of worms with that. But again, even if the property owners are not amenable to some of the conditions, quite frankly, I have to err on the side of caution with the subject matter experts. That's where I stand on. I won't speak again on this. That's how I feel. If we don't put conditions on this, I'm voting against it. If we do, great. But I caution people if we don't. What's your alternative for that spot? Thank you.
Councilor Hay. Councilor Hay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Di Natale. First off, I'd like to state that I can't wait for the ordinance to be written and to these to go to zoning, okay? This body shouldn't have these, and we've done what we can do. It's just a matter of time, and then we won't have these any longer. But we've had them come before us. My biggest issue has always been, do they want to change the number of units? When somebody comes before us and they want to take a two-family and turn it into a four-family, I've been opposed to that. As long as the use request has been the same that it's been done before, I've always advocated for it. I agree with Councilor Di Natale in that we've got more information on this than we've got on any of the other 5 or 6 that have been before us in the last year, with lots of conditions and lots of things that the different departments and the building inspector and the fire department and the planning board are telling us that we need to put on as conditions. If the applicant is willing to accept the conditions, I am certainly willing to support it, because what is the alternative? If we say no, we have one more abandoned building, we have one more building that it becomes a fire hazard, we have one more building that becomes someplace that people go in and live without it being under the auspices of the city and of a management company or a landlord or any of those type things, and makes a problem for us. I wish that we had, the only question I have is why the planning board decided 3 units instead of 4, and I don't have a real understanding, and wish that they had addressed that more for us. But unless somebody comes up with a reason that, or a plan that they're going to do something with this building, I concur with Councilor Di Natale that we should take the recommendations, make them as conditions, and then pass this and let the landlord do what they want to do. Somebody's looking to make an investment, somebody's looking to make a building better in the community, and although yes, we all wish they'd build the Taj Mahal. That's not reality. If they're going to build a building that meets code and is safe and does those things, I think we need to approve it. Thank you.
Councilor Beazall.
Thank you. First of all, as many you know, this is my ward, and I know that tonight some people are saying, let's just approve this because it's a vacant building. Then why don't we just, every vacant factory and every vacant building in the city, why don't we just revamp them all? Okay? I'm looking at what the Community Development Department wrote. The benefits of the city and the neighborhood outweigh the adverse effects of the proposed use. So there's 4 apartments, 3 bedrooms on each apartment. These are going to be, I imagine, for college students. So that's 12 people. That's 12 cars. As many of you know, I've brought before parking petitions, and I've been lambasted by the city council that they do not want to hear about the parking problem around the college, or they don't want to hear about the overcrowding around the college area. Well, that's my ward, and that's the reality up in that ward. Okay? I've been working with the NICE committee, and hopefully, because I know that there's overcrowding in there, I know that the apartments are being overcrowded. I'm hoping that we can get that under control over there. I really can't support this, and it's not because I don't support the gentlemen in their efforts of what they're trying to do. I can't support this because it's not right for the area. It's too overcrowded in that area. At some point, we need to have some space in between buildings so that people can breathe up there. I have more calls about people parking for days on end, months on end. They don't move their cars. And these are residents that live there year round. Okay? All this is going to bring is more people to the area, 12 more cars to the area, potentially. And I'm going to be getting those phone calls. I know that there may be some people that are going to talk about how well the other buildings are run. I have no problem with their other buildings. I haven't read anything. I haven't heard anything. All I know is when you get a chance to do something different in a neighborhood like this that's actually going to make a difference, then we should take that opportunity. Thank you.
Counsel Caddy.
A question. If the council were to vote on this tonight with recommendations, with taking on the recommendations of the planning board and the building department, other than not going with a four-family, if we allow you a four-family, will it still be your intent to go to the zoning board of appeals for the abandonment or the Superior Court?
There'd be no reason to, no.
So you're saying that if we placed all these conditions on that property, other than cutting it down less than a four-family, then that would be agreeable to you?
Peter? Basically, all these are, code compliant items. The barn, it either.
I guess I just want to address one. Is that because we addressed it in our document dealing with this lodging house question. They recommended they suggested. Right. The building, as defined, does not meet the lodging house criteria, period.
I think we heard through Councilor Di Natale from the Board of Health that you'd only be allowed 3 students per unit, which would be a total of 12 students in the entire building.
We'd have less than that. We'd have less than that and no more than 3 per
So to go back to my question, if the council were to adopt this with the recommendations from planning and building, not allowing you to go to a 4-unit, would you still be going to zoning for appeal or the Superior Court?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the attorney. In Fitchburg here, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we have a student housing license process for student housing. A number of years ago, before I was on the council, the council voted, put in a student overlay district in that. And through that, there's a permit process to have student housing. I believe there are 2 currently now. There's one on Day Street and one on North Street. The old Dillon School and the former, the one by the bank, Simons, are under that jurisdiction, which falls under the license department. If this is truly student housing, why wouldn't you go through that process to go under that license, which is for student housing, and why we put it there for the safety and well-being of students?
Because the code expressly forbids 1, 2, 3, and 4 families. This house does not qualify under that.
It doesn't meet the overlay.
Doesn't meet it.
Okay.
Doesn't meet the criteria of the overlay. Can I have the floor, please?
No, sir. We have other counselors on the speakers list.
And the other thing, you mentioned the vacancy rates in that. What I understand, I'm not sure, and I think we have somebody here from the Dillon School that may speak, and then maybe there's somebody from the Simons, but I believe there are vacancies in those student housing.
And that makes you wonder why there are vacancies, and I think Mr. LeMay touched on part of it, location. I mean, this is walkable, and, in terms of smart growth, live, work, play in the same area, which is, there's parking here for 8. I would venture to say that people who have vacancies in those larger, different style houses, they're basically competitors looking to make sure that they cut down on the competition. They may be fine people, but human nature is what it is.
Finish, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry about that early jump in the gun, but I thought I'd try it. It did work.
Understood. Counselor Motion.
I want to get back to Councilor Joseph said. He's absolutely right. We do have the right to go into neighborhoods when they go vacant properties and say, we don't want it. I'm going to give you a prime example. I come from Clegon. I don't know if you know, but Bob knows Clegon. And I was an advocate, fix up the old houses, fix them up. Well, every other day, Daniel Street, Plymouth Street, Fairmont Street was in the paper. Every other day, and then we got a retrieval, North Street came in. But once we tore down the neighborhood, the apartment houses, and we put in single-family units, you never, hardly ever read about Daniel Street, Fairmont Street, Plymouth Street, North Street. And councilors, a lot of you have been on the council. Elm Street is a perfect example where we took down multi-family homes. And look at that neighborhood now on Elm Street. How you ever read about the problems up there? I believe, like Councilor Beazall said, it's a condensed area. And Bob, not to disagree with you, but I did have my glasses on, and I did go down Myrtle Avenue numerous times, and I have seen vacant properties. I've seen vacant properties. I wish my glasses were playing tricks on me, but I saw them going down the road. And I was looking, and a guy behind me got mad because he started tooting the horn.
So the distance here from Orange Street going south, down in Myrtle Ave, again, the farther away you get from down near Moran Square, there absolutely are buildings.
There are buildings down there that are
Okay,
vacant.
again, the
Lower
reason back to
Myrtle Ave.
location is up. The walking line really is north of Congress Street. If you're north of Orange Street, this is where basically people are walking. You are in the middle of the school. This is basically what people would say is smart, development. You have students basically being able to walk to school.
Sure.
Councilor Boishman, you still have the floor.
Go ahead.
You still have the floor.
Oh, one other question, Bob. I asked you when you called me up numerous times, I said, what do you plan on doing with the building? Are you going to rent it to residential area, or are you going to rent it to students?
It's going to be 4 3-bedroom apartments.
Right.
If a family comes to me and says, we want to rent, I'm okay with that. I have other families in that neighborhood now. I'm not going to say it's only going to be college kids. If a family comes in and says, I need a 3-bedroom apartment, I'm open to that. If 3 college kids come to me and say, we want to share an apartment, I'm open to that. I don't exclusively deal with just the college kids. In that neighborhood, I do have 3 families within some of the buildings that we already have.
Yeah, I know. Now, my question to the architect, the bond, you just said to us a couple minutes ago the bond wasn't safe in your opinion.
Correct, yes.
Quote, unquote. Are you planning on fixing up the bond? Or are you going to tear it down?
Actually, can I speak now? Okay.
To that specific point, please.
I wanted to address your concern, Counselor, as far as the parking. What I would be complimenting Counselor Di Natale, that if you allow it to be a 4, no more than 3 bedrooms, 4, no more than 3-bedroom units, I would be actually willing to take the barn down and out, creating more parking spots. So instead of having 8, we'd probably have 12 to 15 parking spots coming all the way around. So that will help, the concern about the parking in the area, and as far as density, if you get a 3-bedroom with families and everything, first of all, the kids are going to be going to local schools. One of the benefits of dealing with college-age students or college-age occupants, the city doesn't have to educate them. We're saving a ton of money as far as the community goes. The people that are here, like we talked about with the location, they walk to school. The cars don't move. But when they do have their cars and they do need off-street parking, I would be willing, if the council allows it with the 4 units, no more than 3 bedrooms, which is, Steve, if that's what you'd be looking for, no more than 3 bedrooms, no more than 3 people, related or unrelated, per unit. So whether it's college students or whether they're families, I'm okay with that. And to create more parking, I'll take the barn down. The barn seems to be
it's a lightning rod.
It's a safety issue. I'm not in love with it. Would I like to fix it and use it for storage? I'm okay with that. But if the council feels, okay, we want the open space, we want the more parking, I'm okay with that. We'll take it down. If that's a condition, I'll take the barn down. Just use the residential building, create more green space, create more parking. The one condition or the concern that I would have is, none of the properties are boarding houses. None of the properties are lodging houses. They're apartment houses. They're 3-bedroom apartments, and that's it.
Councilor Boishman, did you have any further questions?
Not right now, sir.
Councilor Green.
My question to you, Mr. LeMay, is in the presentation packet that Councilor Voigt gave us, it said that you had already spent in excess of $80,000. And I guess I would like to know what you've spent $80,000 on, knowing that there were no permits for this building.
It's primarily the acquisition. The acquisition of the property.
Okay.
And then the carry cost.
And
insurance.
wow, that's a great deal. A 4-family home, 3 bedrooms each, you picked up for $80,000?
Realizing it's going to need an awful lot of money and work.
Knowing to change the stairway and the things, you'd spend at least another $100,000 in improvements in it. Like just the demolition of the barn, you'd spend thousands of dollars.
Right. And in the packet, as one of the conditions that were set forward, was a copy of your leases, which I don't see. And because I do sit on the NICE committee, I do get concerned when I see these large multifamily homes with 3 bedrooms in each unit. And I'm just wondering what your safety net or your guideline is that we keep only 3 people, I guess.
Per unit. Can I
Right,
get
per
that?
unit, right.
So I think that the question of the lease, why it comes up often, and we provided the lease before, we lease under two models, and we detailed it in the packet that Mr. Lavoy crossed up. The first one is we have one person signs the lease, and they're financially responsible for everything. We have a second option where the 3 bedrooms, which only have one person in them per bedroom, sign the lease, where they're signing the lease for the apartment, and they're responsible for the kitchen, living room, bathroom as a shared expense, but they take financial responsibility for any damages to their room, and they're not financially obligated against the other one. As a parent, if you send any of the kids to college and the kid said, sign your lease, they really say, you will be jointly and severally responsible. So if you're in an apartment with 3 people and one of the people move out, the other parents are responsible for the lease. We know from a marketing standpoint that parents do not want that, and that's what causes the confusion. That's why we spelled it out clearly in our document that they lease an apartment, each roommate signs the lease, but they're financially obligated only to the damage to their room, and they're not financially responsible in case someone moves out. We've never gone after a parent for the damages of another student. So it's really a question of people look at, you're renting rooms. And we're not renting rooms. We're just making it so that the apartment, each parent is not guaranteed for the actions of other roommates.
Correct.
Wouldn't these be adults that you would be renting to over the age of 18 going to college?
We still require financial responsibility, which normally means signing the parents as a guarantor.
My son is here, and he's 26, and I still look out after him also. Yeah. Anybody with college kids realizes they probably never grow up. But
Right.
And to complement your request also, or more information, I've given the building department and various department heads my leases a couple of times already. They've been spread out throughout City Hall several different times.
Okay, thank you.
But if anybody wanted to see it again, I have no issue with that.
I think the only question is about all leases. Does that mean that you want the confidentiality of each person? No,
No,
we're clearly willing to provide our template lease.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that I would be curious about, only to protect,
Right.
you know.
Exactly what we spelled out in the document, that's it.
You know, we work
Really to limit
very
financial-
closely with Steve and with the building department, Mr. Lanciati, just to make sure just that.
Okay.
there's 3 people per apartment, period. That's what we're allowed to do. And some of the confusion, as my brother was saying within the lease, is that through parental request, try to isolate who's damaged and who's responsible for damage.
Okay.
So that, I think that's what's come up as far as questions, as far as saying, okay, by leasing to one person, well, we're not. We're leasing the apartment to 3 people, but trying to isolate who's responsible for what.
Thank you.
Counselor Boishman.
Well, you say 3 people. I rent an apartment to young going to college. I get a girl, and I take her home. How about saying she's my roommate? Is that allowed?
No.
No? I mean, how would you know if she's there or not? Unless she's there 24/7.
Well, it is in our lease also. That, I mean, it is hard to control boyfriends, girlfriends, and whatever. And it is in our lease, and to try and spell it out that, or if anybody is visiting for more than 3 consecutive days or more than 14 days a month, they're considered living there, and that's a violation.
And so what do? Do you kick them out?
That becomes sticky too, because we've had, squatters in buildings that actually have a whole lot of rights. So it's a sticky legal issue that, we can say to somebody, you're in violation, and we'll document it and do whatever we can, but we still have the legal parameters that we have to work within.
But the answer is yes, we contact them, write them letters.
On
They
the
absolutely
spot,
are
we make them
contacted
aware
because
that,
it's
they
unfair
gotta
to
go
the other
out.
roommates. Because if you have 4 people using a bathroom, that someone rented the room, and they expected that they were sharing the bathroom with 3 people, and now they're sharing it with 4. They clearly, we notify them that you're being unfair and you're violating the lease.
Now, what do you do about parties?
We work extremely closely with Sergeant Garcia. We have a pilot program going on, and it's become very, very successful. Mr. Martin is here, and he can, I'm sure attest to the numbers. The numbers throughout the city, as far as the college neighborhood and the parties being done, phenomenal. And it's a pilot program that works, where offenders are kind of spoken to and made aware that it's not tolerated. Second offense to the same people, they get a financial fine. That fine escalates for a third offense, and we've been in full support, work extremely closely with Sergeant Garcia on that issue. And they've got my number and speed dial. For me to get a phone call at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, I get right out of bed and I'm there.
Now, one final question. Will you have any objections if this council came? I'm not speaking for all the council, Mr. Head, Council Head. But if they said, every year, once a year, we want your properties inspected by the building department and the board of health at their random choice, once a year.
As long as it's respectful to the occupants too, because we do that already. We have the exterior of the buildings are policed and examined every 5 years. The occupancy program that you have now, the certificate of occupancy, that revolves around every 5 years. So to do that every year, I think it would be easier and more and equally productive if it was at the end of tenancies, or before a new tenancy goes in. If you say, okay, come on in, take a look, go right through the place, make sure, like for example in this building, the sprinklers are working, that the smoke detectors are working, that everything is functionally sound, that it's obvious that there are 3 bedrooms and only 3 bedrooms. I have no problem with that.
You have no problem with that?
If we did it, like I said, if it was at the end of tenancy or anything like that, but to just randomly say, we're coming, that becomes a burden. That's not fair to the occupants.
When we do the inspection for the insurance company, like Lloyd's of London, and they say they have to inspect, they give us notice, and we turn around, and after, we send an email blast to every tenant and tell them that, oh, by the way, we're going on such and such date, we're coming and doing an inspection, and it's basically...
with notice, I would have no problem.
You have to give, you can't do it on the spot, you have to give notice to the tenants to tell them that their space is basically being...
But what I heard described was, at the end of tenancy, to basically re-qualify for a certificate of occupancy.
Correct. I would have no
a lot of
problem
cities
with
do it that way.
Oh, okay.
I think Pittsburgh
We have no
used to-
problem with
Steve,
that
didn't
condition.
Didn't Pittsburgh used to do that? At the end of tenancy, you get like a rental agreement or rental. Yeah, at the end of tenancy, before you rent it again, somebody, a representative from the Board of Health would come in and tour the property and just, okay, you're good to go, here's your rental inspection.
But we could live with a condition like that.
Council Boschman, is that it?
That's it for me, sir.
Council Bean.
Through you to the architect. Mr. LeMay was just talking about possibility of housing families and students. I'm not sure if you had one of the layout of the rooms in that. Are they?
You want it up?
The layout of the floor plan? Was that?
Yes, we have those.
So is it designed for student housing or for family housing, I guess?
It really it's not
random.
differentiated either way. It can be occupied by a family or it can be occupied individually. There aren't bathrooms that are subject just off of a bedroom, so they're off of a hallway. So any of the 3 bedrooms can use that restroom.
And don't take this, but is there like let's say in some of those, is there a master bedroom, like for the parents and children, or is it more all same size bedrooms?
There's some that are larger than others, but clearly it was originally in 1910 designed as probably.
But the intent is more for
two-family
student
home.
housing. I'm just getting a point. I mean, I know we're saying family, but it sounds like it's more of a student housing than family.
Only by location, not by design.
Sure,
Right. Okay.
Only by location.
Yep.
The fact that you could throw a snowball at the campus, then that's the only thing by location. But like I said,
And that's where it goes back to me with the student housing permit process that we have. But until I know more about it, and I'm going to have a discussion at some point with the city solicitor for future things to know more about that. But appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilors, are there any further questions? These gentlemen. That said, is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Yes. Is there?
Solicited.
Did they give her the speech?
Hello, my name is Melanie Kirkendall, and I'm the resident of 145 Murder Avenue, the prettiest house on the block.
Good evening.
By far. Yes.
Ma'am, would you please spell your last name for the record for the clerk?
Kuykendoll.
Thank you. You have the floor.
I heard too much, but I just want to say, when I met Bob, buying these houses, I am a tenant that I will go outside and introduce myself and basically give my little rules in that little area. And he has been very helpful to me since I've been living there, because I have been having some serious problems with tenants, students moving in and out, even with owners. And I met him, spoke with him, and asked him really would he help me since he bought property there. And I would ask the council if it's possible, could he have the permit? I'm being straightforward. That's how I feel.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Oh, okay. Please just state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Edward Landa. I'm currently a student at Fitchburg State, and I live at 83 Highland Ave. I've lived in Bob's places for 3 different places right now: 119 Myrtle, 79 Highland, 83 Highland. I've also lived with another landlord at 182 Highland. And I can really contest that Bob has been always compliant with the students, has always been there. You call him, he's right there. As you were talking about the leases before, I think it's, as a person, like I put myself through school and I put myself through this apartment, knowing that I don't have the costs. Like, I've had a roommate move out before, and Bob's been right there with us, saying to me, no, you don't have to pay for him, don't worry, we'll find another person. Bring a person in, do you like him? Always ask me questions, make sure we're okay, make sure we're fine. As a student, I love that this place is also, right now, I love not driving my car everywhere. I work in Boston as well. I only drive to Boston. I don't have to drive to school. I can walk right there. And, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If you could please come forward, state your name for the record and your address.
Since I raised my hand for both, because I'm not here to speak in favor of nor against. My name is Michael McLaughlin. As you're aware, I am a member of the Board of Appeals, but I'm not here to represent the board or to act as a member of the board. I just would like to reiterate to the council that we're here under 181-356, and that criteria for special permit for non-conforming structures that have been abandoned is the eligibility is to be eligible for such a special permit, the structure must have architectural and other features deemed appropriate for rehabilitation by the city council. I haven't heard the petitioner speak to that, nor have I heard any questions asked. As a resident, you know, our city's at a juncture with what's happening in these over-concentrated, blighted neighborhoods. And what we make for a decision isn't always an easy one, but I always say, as I drive through the city, what's best for the city, what's in the best interest for the city. Obviously, the petitioners are here to benefit their business and what is in their best interests. They're here for financial reason, financial gain. I'm here for the long run. I'm a resident, and I continually see these neighborhoods get redeveloped and they fall into a state of blight again because they're overconcentrated. There's not adequate parking. And I guess I just have, my questions is the council looking at any conditions? We're being told that this is going to be used for student housing, but that's not a condition. We're being told that there'll be no negative fiscal impact on the city, which is, one of the zoning criteria. It could be a multifamily, and it is a multifamily. So effectively, we could see in the future 3, 6, 9, 12 children that do go to the schools. Now, I just look at a building like this and say it's going to generate maybe $3,000 on the tax base, but it cost us over $5,000 or $6,000 to send one student to school. So we're going to rehabilitate an abandoned, blighted building, and we can be upside down fiscally as a city immediately with this building. I trust the council will do the right thing. I have a lot of questions as a resident. What ultimately will we end up with? What is best for the economic redevelopment of Fitchburg? Is it continued concentration in blight and density, or is what has actually changed neighborhoods that other councilors have defined when the city has gone in and eliminated blight and eliminated obsolete buildings? Absolutely, the neighborhoods have changed. There is no shortage of housing stock. We need better housing stock. We need quality housing stock. We need less concentrated housing stock. We need proper parking. I don't know if this proposal has proper parking. I see parking spaces, but I don't know if that criteria for a parking space has been met. What about trash removal? What about the great sea of green trash barrels that we see throughout Fitchburg? Is this going to continue? Is this going to be a part of this project? I just hope that the council asks questions. If they approve it based on the criteria, and they condition it so that we as a city have protection and can look down the road a year or two and say we did the right thing. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Mr. Bry.
Good evening. My name is Jay Bry. I'm the Vice President for Finance Administration at the university. And first I want to start off by saying the university supports any private economic development in the neighborhood or in the city, in particularly those that are working to revitalize these homes back to their original glory. If it's to maintain these homes in these high-density capacities as they've been allowed to do over the years, the university would not support such an effort. Several councilors have spoken to that this is an opportunity to change that neighborhood, that if you miss this opportunity, you're going to miss it for years and years, that this is an opportunity to begin to de-densify this neighborhood, put it back to its original nature as single-family homes and some two-family homes. More importantly, if this is being done as a redevelopment for student housing, as it's been suggested, we would not support it if it wasn't being done under the Student Housing Overlay District and the rules and regulations that go with it. Again, primarily for many of the reasons you as councilors have raised, that those rules and regulations you all put in place because they put the additional requirements for truly managing student housing. There's regulations in there that requires the notification process to all the city administration offices of who's in them, the methods and means, so forth, that you're not bound to do this way. So again, if it's going to be primarily student housing, we would not support this effort also.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Sorry, Mr. President, if I may say one more thing, just a point of clarification. If you talk about occupancy, student housing occupancy, it's correct if you're just going to look at the single-family homes in the neighborhood. That may be a correct stat. If you're looking at all student housing in the neighborhood, that stat is nowhere near correct. You've got properties that are nearly on three-quarters empty that are student housing properties.
Thank you. Mr. Campobasso.
My name is Vincent Campobasso. I am the owner of the Dillon Hall Student Housing Facility. I developed the property approximately 2.5 years ago in accordance with the Fitchburg, City of Fitchburg Student Housing Overlay District. In order to obtain that approval, I had to go through a series of hearings before just about every board in the city of Fitchburg, and each and every board put conditions on the structure of the building and also the use of the building. Every year I am subject to inspections by the Board of Health, by the building inspector, the fire department. I have to appear before the License Commission every year, and I have to report every September every student that's in the property, what room they're in and what apartment they're in. The student housing leases that I have sound very similar to the leases that were described by the proponents. And being a lawyer, my understanding of what they described is basically a lodging house arrangement, where you have bedrooms that are serviced by a common area, kitchen, living room, and a bathroom. So it sounds to me like what they're doing is a lodging house, but they're trying to call it an apartment. I think it's important to understand that, at least I understood, the reason for the overlay district was to try to alleviate the crowded housing that existed for Fitchburg College students. The biggest problem that I have in running my facility is students will leave the facility and go into apartments that are off campus that are not governed. There are usually 4 to 6 to 7 students in an apartment, and there's no oversight at all in these situations. They can get into these situations for $200. When you talk about the finances of my facility, I actually, on a yearly basis, am less expensive from an apartment standpoint than they are at the college. I think Fitchburg State University leases their apartments to students for $7,600 a year. I lease them for about $7,000 a year. I have parking on site, and as required by the overlay district and by the License Commission, I have to have 24/7 resident assistants on site. I have 16 security cameras in the building, and those security cameras are monitored 24 hours a day. And all of these conditions were placed on me by the city of Fitchburg, and in all honesty, rightfully so, because it really is the safest way to run student housing. Situation that I'm listening to now, and I'm not opposed to anyone developing and improving the property, is the apartments are really being built for student housing, yet they're kind of skirting the rules and regulations of the lodging house statute by saying only 3 or less unrelated parties will be living in the apartment. So the consequences of allowing that situation to exist really jeopardizes developers like myself and Simmons Hall, who've expended significant funds to develop our properties. Dillon Hall was not on the tax rolls before I took it over. It is now on the tax rolls. We pay significant taxes to the city of Fitchburg, as does Simmons Hall. But by allowing 2, 3, and 4 apartment dwellings to be converted to student housing with 3 or less students is technically going to put the developers in a position that built out student housing according to the overlay district of having to compete with a situation that we really can't compete with, because we're dealing with conditions that are not in place for these other apartment complexes. What are the consequences, Councilor Di Natale? I guess, would you rather have one empty building, or a building that is torn down, or the old Dillon Hall being empty, or Simmons Hall being empty, or both being empty? So it's a financial consideration that we need to consider when you look at what you may be allowing to take place. Because if you allow it in this situation, how many more times is it going to take place, and how much is it going to jeopardize the developers that have built student housing in accordance with the overlay district and are encumbered by all the conditions that are placed on it by the city of Fitchburg, and again, rightfully so. So for those reasons, I'm in opposition to the city council granting this petition.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? Chief Martineau.
Good evening, councilors. Ernie Martineau, Chief of Police. Let me start off by saying that I'm in favor of the petition as it came forward. What I'm not in favor of is an expansion of off-campus housing for students. There's a significant drain on the resources for the police department. If anything, we should be trying to find a way to reduce our off-campus housing. The strain that's placed on the police department and the campus police department every weekend because of off-campus housing is significant. Now, Mr. LeMay brought up that he works closely with Chris Garcia. I do have to speak in favor of Mr. LeMay. He does work very closely with us. I would be in favor of seeing this as a residential four-family, but I am strictly opposed of any additional off-campus housing for college students.
Thank you, Chief. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Chief Roy.
Councilors, I'm not really here to speak one way or another. I think we ought to make sure it's clear that what we've heard here tonight, to me, is a rooming house under 148 of the fire code, which means 6 or more unrelated people requires a sprinkler system. I believe the building commissioner is asked to put a condition that this building meet the 8th building code, which would provide that with a fully addressable fire alarm system and sprinkler system, and that's what we'd be in favor of, similar to what these other housing units, student housing units, have had to comply with, and what we really need to keep the kids and families safe in these buildings. So whichever way whatever condition, I believe the building commissioner said he recommended meeting the 8th building code, which would accomplish that. If not, then they should meet the 148 fire code as a rooming house, because they're going to be renting to 9 different people, it sounds like, unrelated people, which requires a sprinkler system. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Roy. Is there anyone else wishing? Commissioner Lanciani.
Thank you, councilors. I did write you a letter. This was the first one because this is the first time in the past I've answered forms of intent and not been asked afterwards. I'm now on the list as getting them. You will be getting more comments in the future. In talking to other members of the NICE committee, which most of you are what the NICE committee is, my overall opinion is this project is not worthy of going forward. However, if it does, I did give you some stipulations. I'm looking that the building be fully sprinkled, fire protection and whatnot. It's questioned many times how I came up with abandoned, vacant, whatnot. 3 years ago, the private owners, in preparing to go to court with the building department, had invited us in for a tour. We saw the condition of the barn, the stairs, and other items. At that time, the people said that they were going to abandon the property. They boarded the stairway and emptied the building. That's how I came up with the determination that it was an abandoned property. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about a single housekeeping unit and where that falls in our definitions of use.
A single housekeeping unit, when the entire apartment is rented to collectively a party, whether it's a family or, as the Supreme Court has said, a non-traditional family, which is a group of unrelated people that rent an entire property, an entire apartment, and they're all responsible together. That's a single dwelling unit. What I've been hearing, the comments that they don't hold the other parties liable, or they put tenants in. For several years, I've seen roommates wanted, and Mr. LeMay, Bob, has told me that he's assisting in putting tenants into apartments where a student leaves partway through the year. By building code definitions, that is a boarding house. That is not a single-family house. That is not an apartment. That turns those buildings into boarding houses. What he's told you tonight is several of them are boarding houses, and they don't have licenses.
Councilor Caddy.
Yeah.
If there were a building available in that neighborhood that could allow the owner to put in 12 students with a central kitchen similar to the Dillon School, that would fall under the College Overlay District.
Yes.
So it's been implied that in this case, we have a 4-dwelling unit, a 4-unit dwelling.
Yes.
That we can allow 3 students per unit, which would equal 12.
Yes.
In your opinion, does this constitute the student overlay district?
Our zoning ordinance, as it was written for student housing overlay, prohibits conversion of 1, 2, 3, and 4 family houses into student housing. This is a 1, 2, 3, or 4 unit house, which they can't by our zoning convert.
So in your decision or recommendations to the council, I don't believe that was in there. Is that just something that came up tonight? Now you're kind of jogging your memory on how.
They didn't ask if they could have student housing. They asked if they could have 4 apartments. I didn't.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's been implied tonight. It's been implied.
Yes.
We're in a position where we have to make a decision on this one way. I mean, is that a condition we should be putting on this? There should be a student overlay district?
It's not a question before.
I would defer to city solicitor, but my understanding is you can't because the way the ordinance is written.
My question is about the single housekeeping unit. That phrase, single housekeeping unit, is used to help define a family. A family is 4 people or less, unrelated, that are living in a dwelling as a single housekeeping unit. And the shocking revelation to me tonight is I just received testimony that that's, in fact, not a single housekeeping unit, and consequently, we're not dealing with the dwelling unit according to the definition in our zoning ordinance. We're dealing with a rooming house here. And so that's what's become abundantly clear with me, and that would be something that'll be following up with the building commissioner.
So I guess it would be my guess that we're going to have to give you some time to figure this out, to give us some guidance.
Well, no, I just figured it out tonight. If I accept the testimony of the petitioner that the members of the dwelling unit, there are 4 dwelling units in this building as proposed. Each apartment is its own individual dwelling unit. In order for those to be considered a dwelling unit, a single family unit, there'll be 4 family units in that one, so it would be a multifamily. Each unit has to be occupied and run as a single housekeeping unit, which is a term that's in our zoning ordinance. And to this, from what I heard, that's not the case here. We have 3 bedrooms that are going to be able to be locked and kept separate, and they're all going to share a common area, which is going to be a kitchen and a bathroom. And I don't think that that's a single housekeeping unit. That's my interpretation of it. So if you were looking for some clarity on recommendation from me, I would say that's the classic definition of a boarding house. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lanciani. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If all have been heard, declare the hearing closed. The matter is now before the council.
Motion to table the hearing until we get a ruling from the city solicitor.
Second.
I have a motion and second to table the hearing until further opinion from the city solicitor. Any discussion from councilors? Seeing none, all those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's 6 hours ago.
Ordinances. 27/2016, amending Chapter 3, Section 68. The Code of the City of Fitchburg as follows. Delete therefrom a majority of the members of the Finance Committee. Add in place as follows: the signature of the Finance Committee Chair. In his or her absence, the City Council President has signing authority. In his or her absence, a member of the Finance Committee has signing authority.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 27/2016 to its first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Counselor, 2916 should actually be referred to City Council public hearing on for April 5th, 2016, into the Planning Board. Correct, 2916. Counselor Di Natale. Counselor Di Natale, Counselor Hay has the floor. Yep.
Is and the planning board, or we just said?
It was an error, Counselor.
Okay,
So
okay,
it would in its place would read City Council public hearing 4/5/16 and Planning Board.
Then I will change my motion to that 2816, 3016, 3116 be sent to the respective committees, and 2916 be sent to a public hearing on 516 and the planning board.
I have a motion and second that 28, 30, and 3116 be sent to their respective committees, and 2016 be sent to City Council public hearing on 4/5/16 and to the Planning Board. Councilor Di Natale speaking to the
I
motion.
believe that 2816 should be sent to council as a whole.
Second, that 1216 be adopted. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Catt.
I put quite a bit of time into this last week. Went to the zoning board hearing. Met with the residents. We've got the recommendation from the zoning board. What's before us is the storage of flammable liquids. But I want to say, and I know the developer isn't here, but Dominic, his project manager, I think is your title, is here. I don't want to stress enough that I went up there looking at the neighborhood, taking pictures, and this gentleman seated right here with his family is absolutely the most impacted by this project. And keep in mind that behind their homes is a train station going in. Not far from their home, there's Claygon Oil with tanks of flammable liquids. But in any event, their house sits above this site, looking down on it. The developer has several gas stations. One of them was just built in Lunenburg. I went to look at it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's run beautiful. But I'm still very concerned about these people having to look down at that property. At the zoning board meeting, I requested that vegetation be placed on the property side, the residents' property side, to help block their view. It cannot go on the developer's side of the property because there's a detention pond, and the way it's designed, it doesn't allow the vegetation to be on their property. So it hasn't been confirmed by the developer that he will put vegetation on the resident side. I don't know if that's within our purview to do that, to require a developer to place something on somebody else's property. But I do want to be heard. I want the developer to hear me that I'm strongly in favor of you doing that. And the zoning board has a site review in May. And my intention in May is to go to that site review. And if I can see that gas station from these people's houses, I'm going to try to convince the zoning board to make sure that that does happen. But I just want everyone here, to think about this. Is somebody's building a gas station, and it's a big one in their backyard, and I think it's only fair for the developer to do something to help protect those residents.
Councilor Hay.
Yeah, just concur. The gentleman tonight asked about a screening request. Unfortunately, 1216 for us is just about the storage of the flammable liquids. But I certainly hope that the zoning board, when this comes before them, finds a way for that to happen. If Councilor Caddy says that because of the retention pond, it can't go on the developer's property, I would hope that the developer, in being a good neighbor, would work with the residents to put the screening on their property. And I think the councilors should go to that meeting and voice our concern regarding that, because it's a separate issue, but we can certainly advocate for that. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
I agree with both. I just want to say I commend you for staying tonight, and I appreciate your children being here and being here politely, and I congratulate them for taking part in this civic participation. So I'm sure it's late for them, so hopefully this will get over soon.
Councilor Joseph.
I just like, our economic development coordinator has taken time out of her busy day to come here. I was just wondering if she had 5 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever she wanted to add to the discussion. Be a minute. Yeah.
Very brief, as we do have a motion and second on the floor.
President Kushmarek and councilors, just wanted to state that I sat in on planning board and ZBA related hearings for this one last week, and a lot of residents were present. What I did want to emphasize is something that probably you all are well aware of. This is an economic development area for the city, and this is sort of the first commercial proposal that has come in as we're really looking at this area near the new transit station. So there's that delicate balancing act between the resident abutters, and that's the challenge that the community is working through. But I just wanted to emphasize that this is a very important economic development project, and that was what I emphasized last week at the Zoning Board of Appeals as well.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
Just to follow up on that, if the abutters do not get relief from the developers, will they get relief from the city?
I don't believe I'm in a position to answer that question. That's something that those with the regulatory authority, whether it's ZBA or possibly yourselves, would have to weigh, because it is a balancing act. As we try to grow our economy, which will actually help our residents, there's the balancing act of the residents that are in the periphery, and so I can't quite answer that personally.
Okay.
You good? Councilor Caddy.
Quickly, I would ask that we approve this and that we send, council, if you're in agreement, send a letter to the Zoning Board of Appeals that during that site review meeting, that they, if this piece of property is impacted, that it would be our stance that we would want them to ask the developer to place some vegetation on these people's property.
Yeah.
Councilor Green.
Is Councilor Caddy finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I understand the plea from the residents, and that, yes, it may have a potential to be detrimental to their property. But, again, I don't want to be the thorn on the bush, but this whole development area is zoned industrial, and they could potentially have a factory or an industry running 24 hours a day right at their property as it is right now. So we will, I think, move forward in the best interest of the city and to the residents. And I would suggest that, yes, we plea with the developer, again, to be a good neighbor to these neighbors who could be, a lifelong consumer of your product. So, again, just hoping to do the right thing for everybody involved. Thank you.
Mayor DiNatale.
Well, I was going to wait, Council President, to bring it to a vote. This is unrelated to what we're discussing. I just wanted the opportunity for a few minutes just before we adjourn.
We'll certainly give you that opportunity.
Thank
Yeah, so I'll just add it. I'd like to thank and voice my appreciation for the residents and abutters who have joined us this evening and to voice their comments, as well as the project manager to join us this evening. I certainly hope that moving forward that the project developer and those residents continue active communication. It's the only way it works between any abutters, whether you're talking residential neighbors or you're talking commercial property owners. Need to make sure that there's active communication going on and that everyone's a happy in a satisfied position moving forward. I would certainly I wouldn't want to legislate how the developer conducts themselves on private land of abutters, but I would certainly ask that communication go on, and certainly ask that the developer act in good faith to make the necessary arrangements to not only move the project through to completion, but also to make sure that the abutters are satisfied within all reasonable requirements. That said, as Mary Jo referred, this is an economic development zone, and excited to see movement taking place on that front. If we have no other comments, we have a motion and second to adopt 1216. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Aye. Mayor Di Natale? The floor.
Vote's completed?
The vote is completed.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, sir.
Councilors, I just wanted the opportunity to let you know that my office is working with the Community Development Office in seeking funding through the District Local Technical Assistance Program, which enables the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission to provide technical assistance in researching the capability of the city of Fitchburg to become a green community. And that will be under the auspices of the Mass Department of Energy Resources. Currently, all, and I stress all, of our surrounding north central Mass communities participate in the Commonwealth's Green Community Program. We are the sole city, and we're really on an island in this case. This funding will help provide assistance needed to gather all the information necessary to determine the city's capability of becoming a green community. Furthermore, and this is the key, if Fitchburg is to become a green community, it allows for the opportunity to receive up to $300,000 in funding and support to maintain that green approach in conservation and things of that nature. So it's something that's long overdue for the city of Fitchburg, and I just want you to know that we're moving forward on that, and we hope to make Fitchburg the last city in north central Mass to be a green community. So that was just to inform you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Di Natale. Councilor Green.
Yes. I would like to recognize the brave and valiant efforts made by our Fitchburg Fire Department as they battled the house fire on Walton Street last week. A heartfelt thanks goes out to Fitchburg Fire Department Group 4 and to Fitchburg EMS Paramedic 1 and Paramedic 2 with the assistance from Leominster Fire Department also. Thank you to Chief Roy and Fitchburg Police Officer Michael Fauché for putting their lives and safety of the Olcamus family before your own. I would ask that we take a moment to honor the lives of Irene and Janice Olcamus and to pray for Steve that he will make a healthy recovery. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
I know earlier we had done a moment of silence, but I would also like to propose a moment of silence for the passing of Chief Malcolm Lilly in the past week, a former fire chief in the city of Fitchburg who served us well. Very nice gentleman. He'll be sorely missed in the area because he's a very active in the community as well.
Thank you, Councilor Joseph. We could take a moment of silence to recognize. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Councilor Boschman.
I just want to make it known, too, that not only was Chief Roy in that fire, there was also a police officer that helped carry Steve Olcamus to safety. And we ought to give recommendation to the police department, too, on that, because they did help a lot. She did. Oh, she did? Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. You got to speak up.
We adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor? Let's vote. It is adjourned.
Michael Fauché.